Music is a battleground for culture. Each era of music brings with it a revolution of style, genre, and expression. But some figures stand out above the rest for always fighting for what's right, even when it risks their music career. From fighting career-risking protests to being banned by an entire country, stay tuned as we count down the top 10 musicians who have fought for humanitarian causes. As far as rock and roll symbols go, they don't get much bigger than Bruce Springsteen. The boss has left his mark with anthems like Born in the USA, but the reason and use of their popularity has been rejected by Springsteen. Behind the lyrics, this song and many others have deep political meanings. Born in the USA follows the story of a Vietnam veteran returning to America where he struggles to find support and work and is left with nowhere to go. Springsteen uses the alienation of the working-class man as a theme throughout his music. When conservative President Ronald Reagan used the song for his 1984 re-election campaign, Springsteen asked whether Reagan had actually read the lyrics. His acoustic stripped-down album, The Ghost of Tom Joad, inspired by John Steinbeck's novel, rallies against police violence, reactionary politics, and societal injustice. Springsteen has said that music is important to activism because it stirs passion. Over the decades, he has supported progressive issues like LGBT rights, speaking publicly about the importance of gay marriage as far back as 1996. 20 years later, he canceled the show in North Carolina in protest against the anti-LGBT laws of the state. With a discography spanning over 20 years, 2 languages, and multiple genres, Shakira is nothing short of a phenomenon. The Colombian was signed to Sony Music at just age 13. She was a national sensation by the 1990s, and then she broke into the English-speaking world in the early 2000s. Her high energy and dynamic music is matched by a passion for philanthropic work. As her career took off, she created the Pies Descalzos Foundation, which gives education, food, and shelter to disadvantaged children in Colombia. Most people don't know, but she is considered a big name in the field. She has worked with the World Bank, the United Nations, and was even appointed to an advisory commission by President Obama in 2011. When she was awarded the Humanitarian Award at the World Economic Forum, she took the opportunity to tell leaders that if we don't act soon, an entire generation of disadvantaged kids could be wasted. And Shakira is doing her part. Say the words reggae or Rastafari and one face comes to mind: Bob Marley. His music continues to top charts 40 years after his death, and wrapped in the head-bobbing, slow-tempo fusion rhythms, which make for good vibes, are inspiring lyrics pointing to injustices. Bob Marley's life was a political message from birth to death. His music was produced in a time of total upheaval in his home country of Jamaica. As he rose to fame, he used his newfound power to organize peace talks between rival political parties who were carrying out violence on the streets, iconically raising their arms together at the One Love Peace concert in Kingston. Bob Marley endorsed non-violence but never shied away from confronting the tough realities of the world. His music covers issues of slavery, police brutality, racism, and the importance of revolution. The song Get Up, Stand Up is one of the most straightforward calls to action and has gone on to become a soundtrack for struggle. But in his time, Bob Marley's activism made him a target, surviving an assassination attempt in 1976. His music and messages live on. Born in North Carolina under Jim Crow laws, Nina Simone faced huge opposition both in her personal and professional life. She's remembered for both her staggering musical prowess with her rendition of the jazz classic My Baby Just Cares for Me and her own masterpiece of seduction, I Put a Spell on You. But in America, she is remembered just as much with deep involvement in the civil rights movement. It was after a 1961 trip to Nigeria, where she was invited to take part in an African American conference, that she became more visibly involved in politics. In the early 1960s, police violence and unrest were boiling, with protests and riots becoming more frequent. The bombing of an African American church in Alabama inspired Nina Simone to write Mississippi Goddamn, where she rejects the sentiment of going slow and demands equality now. With Black nationalist and Black power groups, she brought attention to civil rights in all her concerts and was undoubtedly one of the biggest names to do so at the time. Sting is a man who needs no introduction, but we're going to give a brief one anyway. Born out of success as the frontman and songwriter of The Police, he shaped an entire generation of music, with Englishman in New York, Shape of My Heart, Fields of Gold, and too many more to name. Coming from humble beginnings, Sting remained close to his roots and never lost sight of his duty to others. He wrote the song Driven to Tears in response to news coverage about starving children in Africa, and later Di-Do-Do-Do-Di-Da-Da-Da about how figures in power use language deceptively. But Sting still felt that his lyrics and message weren't being received. His tour history speaks for itself, playing at events like Live Aid, Amnesty International concerts, the Rainforest Foundation Fund, and Live Earth. Throughout his career, he continued to make blatantly political music. His 1987 song They Dance Alone, Cueca Solo, tells the harrowing accounts of women losing loved ones under Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet's regime and performing a traditional dance in their honor. It's impossible to overestimate the impact that Bob Dylan has had on the world. His fingerprints are found everywhere, not just in music, but in culture too. Bob Dylan provided one of the most important social commentaries during the late 20th century during a time of radical change. The times they are a-changin', and Blowin' in the Wind are synonymous with protest music. His style, masterful songwriting, and unique singing were the chants of a restless generation. During the Cold War, his song Masters of War reacted to the growing risk of nuclear conflict. It served as a message to political leaders wielding people's lives for profit and power. Bob Dylan's music quickly became embedded into counterculture America, popular in the folk and civil rights movements. His music has been so influential that his lyrics are studied in university courses and even a conference in 1998. Dylan infamously stays out of the public eye but worked with the World Food Program in 2009 to give food to the less fortunate. He also released a Christmas album and pledged all profits and royalties to the cause. Bob Geldof is a rare name in music whose work in philanthropy far eclipsed his musical career. Before his charity work, Geldof was the singer of the Boomtown Rats, an Irish new wave band that broke through with hits like Rat Trap and I Don't Lie Mondays. But it was a short-lived career. Even among rock and roll standards, Geldof couldn't keep quiet. He had the band exiled from playing in Ireland for publicly lashing out at the government and the Catholic Church. It was then during the early 80s that Geldof found himself steered towards a life of humanitarianism and what he's best known for, Live Aid. He organized the event to raise money for the 1983 famine in Ethiopia. With his connections, he was able to attract a who's who of musical royalty, including David Bowie, Sting, Phil Collins, U2, Elton John, and of course, that iconic performance by Queen. At the time, Live Aid was by far the biggest television broadcast event in history, with a staggering 40% of the world tuning in to watch. And Bob Geldof didn't stop there. He used the success of Live Aid to continue campaigning for governments around the world to assist Africa with events and conferences. He was even appointed as the development chief of Ghana, going far beyond what anyone expected an Irish punk rocker could achieve. Easily the most flamboyant and stylish in rock and roll, Elton John changed the face of music forever with songs like Tiny Dancer, Rocket Man, Crocodile Rock, and I'm Still Standing. Elton is a human hit factory, and his relevance has refused to fade. He delighted a huge crowd at this year's Glastonbury Festival in what might be one of his final shows. But it was throughout the 70s and 80s when he made his most important mark on culture and would lead him to becoming an LGBT icon when he came out as gay. His song Philadelphia Freedom was written for tennis star Billie Jean King against the backdrop of equal rights campaigning. It has since become a pride anthem. And in 1992, he created the Elton John AIDS Foundation, having lost two of his close friends to the disease, one of which was Freddie Mercury. The foundation went on to host a number of events and raise over $400 million for the cause. Diamonds in the Rust and The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down are some of the most famous songs from Joan Baez, though none of her breakthrough work do justice to just how influential she was on music and culture in the 1960s. She catapulted Bob Dylan to fame and shaped the landscape of folk music, which was intimately tied to a movement committed to justice, fighting for civil rights, protesting against war and police brutality, as well as more equality for women. Joan performed at the 1963 March on Washington, which culminated in Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech was given. Joan performed the resistance song "We Shall Overcome" to an audience of around 250,000 people. Baez was an anti-war figure with integrity, visiting North Vietnam during America's occupation, where she narrowly escaped an American bombing campaign that lasted 11 days. She has gone on to oppose wars in Iran and Iraq, supporting non-violent protest instead. As if Alicia Keys needed to do anything else to cement herself as a superstar, over the last 3 decades, she's written herself into the R&B history books. Growing up in working-class New York, she was exposed to the dark side of the world at an early age. Her music covers themes of love and female empowerment all the way through to political action, with many of her songs described as inspirational and uplifting. It's no surprise that away from the stage, Keys has been busy rallying support for charities, disasters, and social movements. In the early 2000s, she promoted HIV/AIDS nonprofit groups in Africa, even visiting Uganda and Kenya to help raise awareness. Wherever she sees people in need, Alicia Keys has never hesitated to step in. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans a few years later, leaving communities decimated, she performed at 2 benefit shows to raise money. And she even earned Amnesty International's Ambassador of Conscience Award for her involvement in the Indigenous rights movement in Canada. In her acceptance speech, she promised to continue to speak out against injustice as long as she had a platform. Alicia Keys quickly became a role model for young women, paving the way for the next generation, with Rihanna crediting her as a big influence, and her name will forever be associated with women's rights, humanitarianism, and of course, as the queen of R&B. That's it, the top 10 most humanitarian artists. Do you think we left anyone out? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.